everybody's head about the bed. Bed, bed, bed. The bed's a winner, winner, bed, bed, bed. The bed's a winner, winner, bed, bed, bed. The bed's a winner, winner, bed, bed. The bed's a winner, winner, bed, 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 bed, bed. The bed's a winner, winner, don't you know? About the bird, well, everybody's talking about the bird, the winner, bird, bird. The bird's a winner, winner, bird.
Good thing we weren't standing there.
All jump off.
Amid the roar of diesel engines and the spray of foam, speeding to battle to meet the challenges faced by the United States Navy in the muddy brown waters of the Mekong River Delta. The PBR, or Patrol Boat River, became the backbone of U.S. naval forces on Vietnam's inland waterways. Small, fast, and deadly, the PBR was one of the most versatile fighting packages that ever took to the water. Its 30-foot-long, 10-foot-wide fiberglass hull mounted a powerful variety of machine guns and grenade launchers. It could travel up to 180 miles on a single tank of fuel. And with its twin engines driving a unique water jet propulsion system, the PBR could streak over the water at speeds of nearly 30 knots. Like the PT boat of an earlier era, the PBR earned the love of its crews and the respect of its enemies by demonstrating a relentless utility. Day in and day out, it performed every mission imaginable, from search and seizure of enemy supplies to special warfare missions, to supporting complex operations by other U.S. mobile riverine forces. It was qualities like these that earned the Patrol Boat River its hard-won nickname. To the crews who manned it, the initials PBR stood for proud, brave, reliable. One of the most important missions undertaken by the U.S. military in Vietnam was stemming the tide of enemy arms and supplies that flowed into the country. At the beginning of America's direct involvement in the conflict during the mid-1960s, the main concern of the U.S. High Command was infiltration in the coastal areas of South Vietnam.
The president had already committed himself to assist the people of South Vietnam, so he sent General Westmoreland out there as the ground commander, and he discovered that most of the infiltration was coming from the sea. And he turned to the Navy, and the Navy came up with this Operation Maritime, which was a coastal surveillance force.
Beginning in 1965 with 2 Navy destroyers, Operation Maritime used a wide variety of vessels and aircraft. But Maritime's greatest success was centered around 17 Coast Guard cutters and 100 aluminum-hulled swift boats that patrolled the coastal waters and river mouths, stopped and searched thousands of suspect vessels, and effectively strangled the flow of arms into the country by sea. But somehow, munitions were still getting into South Vietnam.
The Maritime had done such a good job on slowing down infiltration from the sea that Westmoreland said it must be coming in somewhere else. They ascertained from intelligence that it was coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail into Cambodia and then into Vietnam through the Delta. So naturally he turned to the Navy and said, do something about the Delta.
Spreading over 75,000 square miles, crisscrossed by hundreds of tributaries and canals, the fertile Mekong River Delta south of Saigon was the heart of South Vietnam's food production, as well as a major population center. Because of its central role in the life and economy of South Vietnam, control of the Delta was vital for both sides during the war.
The strategic importance of the Mekong Delta arose from the fact that it was and still is the rice bowl of South Vietnam. And the people in the Delta produced rice and other crops. So from a point of view of living in...
It was with mixed emotions then that the men of the Navy PBR crews learned that every last one of their boats would be turned over to the South Vietnamese Navy. It was part of a program called Vietnamization, a countrywide effort initiated by President Nixon to shift responsibility for fighting the war to the South Vietnamese armed forces. And the U.S. Navy was one of the first branches of the service to implement it.
Giving up your boat, you had mixed feelings. And I think the feelings is that it was so much part of the boat, and the boat was so much part of you. It was like giving up a child or something and giving it over to somebody else to raise and take care of.
The first PBRs were transferred to South Vietnam in 1969. By 1971, the total number of U.S. Navy PBR sailors in Vietnam was less than a third of its peak level 2 years before.
We kept our patrols on the river, and we added one Vietnamese to each boat until he was trained. Once he was trained, we'd pull the sailor off, usually the seaman. Then we'd put another Vietnamese on, and usually that was the gunner. Then we pulled the sailor off, sent him back to the States. Then we trained the engineer, and then we trained the boat captain. Once we got a 4-man Vietnamese crew, then I turned the whole division over to the Vietnamese Navy and said, now you're in charge of this section of the river.
When the last able-bodied American seaman left his boat in 1972, 293 PBRs were in the hands of the South Vietnamese Navy, 3 times as many boats as any other American-made watercraft. The PBRs continued to serve their new owners with the same rugged utility they had demonstrated from the beginning of their tenure in Vietnam. And even though their ultimate mission of helping to achieve victory was frustrated, the service these exceptional boats rendered was invaluable, indeed providing the cornerstone of American and South Vietnamese naval strategy in a unique and challenging environment. In succeeding decades, the PBRs continued to play a significant, though smaller, role in the U.S. Navy. And modern versions of the boats were still on active duty in the 1990s, nearly a generation after Willis Slane's revolutionary prototype first took to the water. Simple and transportable, flexible and fast, the patrol boat river has won a singular place in the history of naval combat. Perhaps not since the PT boats of World War II has another small vessel in the U.S. Navy taken on so many roles so successfully. But without a doubt, the most important legacy of the PBRs can be found in the officers and sailors who manned and commanded them.
The PBRs were near and dear to my heart because they were so effective when I was in command there. But it was very difficult for me, as it is for every military commander, to send men into action knowing that not all of them would come back. Here we have a monument listing the names of game warden people associated with PBRs that were killed in action in Vietnam. These names trigger emotional responses for those of us in that operation. The men in the PBRs were attached to one another. And when I see this list, it brings tears to my soul, if not to my eyes.
If I had to do all over again, I would be right back there again because the boats I really love. They were a part of me and they still are a part of me.
To these gallant men, the words proud, brave, reliable.
But the work of war goes on. The enemy has used the rains to his advantage. 2 companies of Viet Cong have been discovered on the shores of the Ba Lai Canal, digging bunkers for an ambush. A plan is made. Patrol boats will transit the canal and act as decoys to force an encounter with the enemy. The ship's helicopters will remain on board, fueled and armed, ready for action.
Charlie will expend a little more energy than he has been. So I want you people to be extremely cautious on the rivers.
The risks of entering a narrow canal are great. These shallow zones of water are the haven of the Viet Cong. Boats are forced to move slowly. becoming easy targets for enemy fire. Unforeseen circumstances often dictate strategy. Despite all their preparation and planning, the men must turn back. The water has become too shallow. They are forced to find another route.
Turn port 180.
Iron Hat 2. Go ahead. Over. Iron Hat 2. Signal Juliet. We're drawing fire from the beach. Coordinates X-ray Sierra 540210. Need the helos. Over.
True as Juliet, this is Iron Hat 2. Roger out. Bridge, this is radio. Scramble the helos.
Okay, Bill. Check the fuel boost pump. Are we clear? Coming hot. Turn port 180.
This is 4-3, reaching 5. What's the story? This is 4-3, interrogative, your intentions this time. This Kilo, we're still receiving automatic weapons fire from the beach there. This is 4-3, do you have the smoke on the beach? This Kilo, that's affirmative, over. Roger, that's the target area there. Kilo, roger. No, this is Kilo, we'll make a fire run, over. Kilo, this is 4-3. Let me know when you commence your run and we'll come in behind you there. This is 4-3, roger. You have my smoke in sight there. We received automatic weapons fired from the beach side and also from the tree line on either side of the smoke running from north to south.
Có những người anh tôi chưa biết tên, tha thiết cuộc đời đôi môi thắm duyên, quê hương trong khói lửa mùa chinh chiến, quên tình yêu riêng sông pha chiến tuyến.
Có những người anh tôi quen đã lâu, năm tháng kể nhau chia bao khổ đau, từng quê xa vắng hôm nào biệt ly, không ngại ngùng đi trong ánh nắng cao. Các anh là nguồn thơ vô song, các anh là tình thương mênh mông, là nguồn tiếng ca vang vang tận cõi lòng, và trong tiếng chim vui liêu lò ngoài sân. Các anh là vầng mây muôn phương, các anh là niềm vui quê hương, là tia nắng mai reo trên vạt nẻo đường, là cơn gió mang hương thơm tận ngàn phương. Anh hỡi người trai đi trong gió sương, lưu luyến gì không khi xa cố hương, non sông hoa ngắm đang chờ nơi anh, mang về vinh quang tự do nó ấm. Đâu những mùa xuân hoa khoe sắc tươi, đâu những mùa thu nghe lá úa rơi, yêu sông yêu
ngày